Hey y'all, welcome to Night Shift Delirium, a podcast about junior doctors and the world that surrounds them. I'm your host, Victoria, a junior doctor based in England. I know it's been a while since our last episode, and I do extend my apologies to everyone. However, sometimes life gets the best of us. On this week's episode, we're going to chat with a fresh deep, also known as Affi. She's a junior doctor based in New Zealand, but has studied, lived, and traveled all around the world. She's going to share how each of those experiences inform her practice today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode with a fresh deep. Welcome to our shift, y'all. So today we're talking with the Fresh Deep, who is a junior doctor based in New Zealand, about her experiences all around the world being a global citizen and global student. A Fresh Deep, before we begin, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm a Fresh Deep, or you can call me Affi. I am currently living in New Zealand. I've been here for about a year and a half since I left the UK, but I'm originally from New Zealand, grown up here my whole life. Yeah, and that's me. I'm a pediatric training doctor. I'm starting my registrar post this year, which is exciting and also really nerve-wracking. And yeah, that's me.
Amazing. That is very cool. So we know each other from medical school. We did sort of a UK medical school in Cyprus. And I think a lot of people, well, not I think, a lot of people don't really understand that concept of training somewhere else, especially for both of us, learning another country's approach to medicine in a third country, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
what took you to Cyprus? What convinced you that this was an appropriate program for you?
So I guess like when I started applying, so I've done my GAMSAT and I'd done my finished my degree, and because like New Zealand runs from January to December, not July to July, because our summer winter is all different. Um, so when I was applying, I had a few like 9 months break and just like throwing my applications everywhere, throw it in Australia, tried the UK, and then I ran across this UK program in Cyprus, and I was like, oh, international student, fees much cheaper. And yeah, there was like this guy who runs like the Australia New Zealand, like he talks to everyone from this region, and he was like really like convincing about it, and like just reading the reviews, and I was like, okay, well, let's just see. I was young. Let's just go with let's go there with 1 month and see how it goes. And yeah, I kind of liked it from like the start, so just kept on going, and here we are.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think a lot of us really came across really sort of similar, came across the
Yeah,
school in similar ways. We were just looking online, seeing what's there. We see
yeah,
the Georges in Cyprus, and the
yeah,
cost is like something very serious to consider because med
definitely.
school is 4 years and it's a lot of money. And I think that really got a lot of us. Do you think that it affected or influenced your approach and understanding of medicine, either like cross culturally or like eventually when you came to England? Actually, you know what? Before I even ask that, can you give us a sort of geographic journey? Because we've mentioned Cyprus, we've mentioned England, and you're also in New Zealand. So people might not exactly understand how we got there.
Oh, okay, yeah. My geographic journey starts in India, and that's where I was born. My my brother was born there as well. We moved from India, immigrated to New Zealand. Like so my mom and dad and these two little kids. I was 6 years old and my brother was one. And my parents are both like well-educated people, but they came to New Zealand and they started off with very like low income jobs. Like my mom, a PhD scholar, was working in a factory. So yeah, that's where like our geographical journey started. Yeah, my parents were raising us, and they were like really you got to have a good education. That's all we're going to give you. We can't give you anything else. Like that's where you got to start from. So yeah, from right from the start, we had to like work hard, like extra tuitions. I guess like the same thing as like every other story. And then went into uni. I think from right from the start, I was like, oh, I really want to become a doctor. I've seen my dad like in hospital from like a young age. He had like a heart attack when he was like 38. So he's had like bypasses. I've seen him in hospital right from when I think when I was 2. So I've like, we just remember him being around healthcare. And he's also a vet. So I've seen him like treat animals and stuff. So I was like, oh, this is something I could like get into. And then, so did my uni, tried for med school here, and there's only 2 medical schools. So like 2,000 people applying per year.
Joking, two schools. That is
Yeah.
wild.
So like New Zealand is like North Island and South Island, and there's one med school in each island. And it's super competitive. You pretty much have to have like straight A's and if not A pluses. And that's I was like a very average student. If I got an A, I'd be like, yes, made it.
Yeah, totally.
And then so yeah, it was just so super competitive. You just do like there was so many exams to do as well. Like you have this UMAT exam, and then if you don't get a good score in your undergraduate year, you do the GAMSAT exam, which is for graduate entry medicine, and that's valid in Australia and the UK, and I think some Ireland schools as well. So I just wanted to like not do any more exams. I was so sick of it, and just use that score to apply to all these different unis. And that's how I came across the St. George's program. And they were just like so quick as well, processing all the applications and stuff. And then yeah, so just did started my journey and went abroad to Cyprus. And my parents were like, okay, this is like, are you crazy? But they were super excited for me as well. And I guess like I was like, oh, what's the worst that could happen? You know, you hate it and like you want to come back, and then
That's
you
one
just
way
have,
to look at,
yeah.
moving across the world into a different continent with different language. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah. I guess because like, we've seen life right from like the worst as in like starting off from scratch. So like you're like, oh, what actually could be worse? We have a house, we have a roof over our head, we're feeding ourselves. And I guess if I get there and then all I have to make sure is ask my parents, can you please buy my ticket back home?
Right. Okay, so you went from Cyprus to England. What took you to
Hmm.
England?
So I guess England was like probably the first option, as in like to work as a doctor. Ultimately, I knew my goal was to come back to New Zealand at some point, but I guess I didn't really plan it out like when that would happen. But it would have been too hard straight after graduating. And I was like, oh, like 1 or 2 years in the UK would be like really good experience as well. So went to UK as an F1. Didn't really know what we were getting into, all the deaneries, all the trusts. I guess even the UK students in physically in the UK had like a tough time ranking everything, and we were just, yeah, I guess like this place looks good. It looks nice in Google Images. Well, so yeah, I just ranked. I think South Thames was my first choice, so I got that. And then after that, I didn't really know what I was ranking. I just knew I didn't want to be physically like in London, but close by to London, so I could like visit here and there. And yeah, I ended up going to in Kent, which is it was like, oh, Kent sounds so fancy. I was like, yeah, no, it's not. Like probably the worst place in the UK.
So interesting because that place has a very specific reputation,
Yeah,
that I think only people in the UK know. You know what I mean? Like we're
yeah,
coming
yeah,
from
yeah,
outside, no one knows. Everyone thinks Kent, and I don't know where we all have this impression from that it's like some
yeah.
posh place. I don't know. It maybe it was on like a movie or something, but yeah, I think a lot of people have that same exact
Yeah.
sort of approach.
I think because when people think about Kent, they think about like Cambridge and they think about like all those other like nice areas, private schools. And that's literally how they like introduce our like when we got to like the first day of F1, they're like, yeah, you probably think that Kent is a really nice place and blah blah, but and I was like, oh my God, where are we? Like literally the CMO was like making this talk,
Oh
and we're
my
like, oh
goodness.
gosh. Like,
So, how did you find your first year? I guess being a doctor and also being in England, away from family and everything. And I mean, I think it's important to note that for us, our first year of being a doctor was the year that the world encountered COVID, right? Like,
yeah,
a doctor for what, 6 months, if that?
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and then
literally.
COVID showed up. So, how
Yeah.
did that inform your practice and sort of like your day-to-day experiences?
Well, I guess I was, you like first starting off your first rotation and just being away from home, and you don't get that like regular support of like going home and like talking about things. And I'm in a completely different time zone, so it's just I have this like one window to share with my family if I have like things that I need to talk about. But yeah, super nerve-wracking to start off. And then like I guess because maybe like the NHS in itself is so like culturally diverse, you just feel at home with like all the different types of people and everyone's so welcoming. I found that when I started off in my rotation, I really had like no problems in terms of people that I worked with. Everyone had given so much advice. Um, and then like after you get settled in and you're like, oh, now I have to change my rotation. And then I was in psychiatry, which was also fine, but it was like not the best learning. You just sit there, have a little GP job going on the side, and you're like, I'm just an F1. I don't know what I'm doing. And then COVID happened, and I was like, yeah, okay, well, maybe it'll be nice to go back because my next rotation was cardiology, and I was super excited to have that. And then they're like, yep, not happening. You guys are just staying in your rotations. I was like, no, I'm not going to progress as a doctor. And especially if I go back to New Zealand. And like, I knew that was happening. And I was like, oh, then like, no one's going to be happy with me if they're like,
Yeah,
yeah, you've just done Jerry's and psych. So I guess
yeah,
that was like my freak out moment of like I don't know basic like stuff to manage on the wards and stuff. Like you have your on calls and things, but like just as a overall experience compared to like an intern in New Zealand, I'd be pretty like back.
mm,
So I guess that was freaky, and then all our like learning opportunities were all cancelled during that time. So yeah, I guess everyone had like a different story and freaking out.
yeah. I mean, I think I've spoken. We've definitely spoken about it, and I'm pretty sure I've mentioned it on the podcast before about how COVID really was like a game changer for a lot of different ways. Like you really saw the importance of service provision
Yeah,
at any cost, if even to like our progression and our knowledge. And
yeah.
so, yeah, I think for a lot of people, it was a make or break. And I think, you said that you're in two different time zones, but I think the listeners, because unless you're going to look it up, which I doubt y'all will, there's a 13-hour difference. Like,
Yeah,
it's nighttime where I am, and it's like a
yeah.
bright and sunshiny
It's
morning
yeah.
where you are.
It's literally like opposite time and opposite weather.
Yeah, and for your sort of support network to be that far away from you in a time where
Yeah,
everyone is kind of, holding close to their family and loved ones, I think
yeah,
that it really can't be understated the impact of that on
yeah,
one, on your outlook and on your approach to everything.
yeah,
So
definitely.
at what point did you decide that you were going to go back to New Zealand, and what did you do to prepare for that?
So I think I went in with a plan that I would go back either after first year or second year. And I guess because I met my then boyfriend or fiance, and I can't remember when things happened, but I guess that was probably more of a pull to come back sooner than later. And then I guess COVID happened as well, so that was like a done decision because there was no COVID in New Zealand at that time. Like, so we were like under the impression that, oh yeah, New Zealand's never gonna get COVID, blah blah blah. And then
Right.
yeah, like I
Glad that there
think
wasn't.
they had a lockdown for like a month, and then there was no COVID for like a few months after that. So then everyone was like back to normal, going to concerts and doing all those things, whereas like everyone else here was like
Yeah,
still in
it was
lockdown.
prison. It was prison for apparently everyone but Boris. But
Yeah,
yeah, that is really, I completely forgot about the fact that you're like seeing people live there. One, you're seeing your family, like, and you have no way
yeah,
of getting to, and then they're all living a pretty good life while we're like
yeah,
in literal lockdown, can't even get your hair done for like a year,
exactly.
you know?
Yeah, yeah, literally. I'm like, you guys don't understand. But anyways, I guess like the whole application process to like go to New Zealand wasn't affected by COVID that time. I'm not sure how it is now, but I think there's still UK doctors coming through quite often. Yeah, the process was so easy. All I had to do was make sure I apply for my registration, show them that I am definitely GMC approved, and just wait for my full registration to come through after F1. And then I applied for, so you apply for that and you apply for like a job at the same time. The main Auckland hospitals wanted like a 2 year experience, but like the regional hospitals where I'm working, so I'm working in a hospital in Northland. That was like they were pretty happy to have me as soon as possible. Yeah, so then I started my role there.
Interesting. So when you went back, did you feel like a fish out of water? Like, you were concerned during the COVID part. I'm gonna
Yeah,
be skilled while I'm here. Also, like
yeah,
it's your first time working as a doctor in New Zealand. Was
yeah.
it overwhelming or did it just kind of feel like right?
So yeah, I think it was probably I felt definitely a fish out of water. I thought like it would be quite similar because like we both have like universal health systems, but like it's the same thing here where like whereas like the GP refers you to the hospital and like you don't just like oh you go through ED and things like that. It's pretty similar. But I started my role as so in New Zealand they don't have locums, they have what we call relievers. They do have locums, but they're quite rare. Like hardly see much locums in the hospital. Whereas in the UK, we were doing locum shifts all the time.
Right.
Um, and so I started as a reliever, which is pretty much covering any specialty that you like to get more experience in or that you're comfortable doing. And medicine and surgery is just a given because like any junior doctor should be able to cover that. But I had never done a surgical like ward or anything because all my rotations were like Jerry's and ED and psych. And ED was like during COVID as well. So like you weren't seeing classic like ED presentations all the time. And EDs were empty that time as well. So we weren't really doing much. So yeah, I think I did that for like 5 months. And that was pretty intense because you pretty much changed on a day-to-day basis where they would like need you to fill the gaps. So some days were pretty okay, but most days were pretty intense. I wouldn't finish late or anything, but I think just being in a totally different system, trying to work out like a new hospital and then doing any kind of shifts, like anytime with any team who don't really know you and like they'd be super confused about your life as well. They're like, you have a New Zealand accent, but you're from the UK. Like, what? Like, I don't have time to explain.
Oh my gosh, that is so interesting. And I really find the syntax here to be really interesting as well, like being called a reliever. I mean, we
Yeah,
all hear that like work-life balance is so much better in New Zealand compared
yeah,
to England. And like I'm hearing with that knowledge, I'm hearing the word reliever and I'm like, oh my gosh, they like care about the doctors. Like they're trying to relieve their workload. Am I making a false utopia or
I guess I don't know. I think junior doctors are gonna be, the bottom like of every kind of
juniors are going to be
hierarchy of
juniors
it. Yeah.
everywhere in the world?
So relievers, as nice as it sounds, I guess it's more of like the same problem in any kind of like system, whereas if it's NHS or if it's New Zealand, there's a doctor shortage. So in my hospital, why they have relievers is because like there's not like the doctors still need leave, and when they take the leave, that's when they try to fill it with relievers. Or you might get like a reliever covering a short notice call, meaning like if a doctor calls in sick, at least there's a backup to do it. So because they don't try to use locums too much, because locums are expensive, whereas relievers get paid like the same, like similar, maybe just a band higher than like a normal doctor. So
Whoa,
that's
whoa, 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 whoa. Time out. I am shocked at this. I
yeah,
thought it was the same thing but a different name. But no, you're not getting like locum rates, as we know,
yeah,
it's not bad for a rainy day fund, if you
yeah,
will.
yeah,
So you might be more willing to go with sort of like not knowing where you're going to be that day for a shift, or having
yeah, yeah,
jobs that are not so fun.
yeah.
So the pay isn't, it's a
The
little bit
pay,
higher, but not significantly.
it's like comparatively it would be, so for example, like a normal first year, oh actually I don't even know what a first year doctor makes, but the second year doctor would be making somewhere between like 90 to $100,000, which is like um divide that by two for pounds, so like 45 to 50 thousand pounds. But a reliever would make maybe like 10,000 pounds extra,
Okay.
depending on what year they are. If they're like a postgraduate year 4 doctor, then they'll get paid comparatively higher because they have more experience. So they pay you in terms of like how many years experience you have as well. But yeah, I just don't know if it's worth the pain of
Yeah.
working. And yeah, they just have so many weird rules here. Like, you know how in the UK you don't work 7 days, like more than 7 days.
Yeah.
I've worked 12 days here straight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they've done this. So relievers are allowed, like, they're allowed to work 12 days and then even just have like a weekend break and then 12 days again. So I've had that before. It doesn't happen too often, but it's allowed, so I can't fight
Mm.
it. Um, but a normal roster, like, so on my pediatric roster, I would have 10 days straight, and during some bits of the roster.
Junior doctor criminal acts as infamous, alleged housewife criminals. Jen Shah, truly the lightest, most carefree criminal we've seen on television. She's the equivalent of a junior doctor completely ignoring a new consult right before the shift ends and leaving it for the next team on shift. The consult could be something serious or something light. This junior, however, will never know and will continue living whatever life they define as their best one. Next, we have Erika Jayne, definitely the most aggressive and contradictory, allegedly, criminal housewife. She's the equivalent of the junior who always and consistently writes in retrospect, especially when seniors are looking closely at a particular case. Did it happen? Was it in that particular order? We'll never know, but the junior will stick beside it. Teresa Guidice. Ignorance is both her strength and her weakness. She's definitely the junior who takes someone else's assessment and writes it down as their own. Was there a murmur? Are the cranial nerves intact? I guess it depends on who wrote the initial assessment. Miss something big and put your name down? Immediately jail. Lastly, we have Danielle Staub, allegedly the most calculated and dangerous housewife of them all. She's not exactly a junior doctor, but rather possibly negligent consultant attending or a senior trainee. This doctor has learned the game and now writes the rules. If anything bad happens, it almost certainly will be someone else's fault. If they lose their job, it's their fault for not knowing the rules of the game.
So I guess that was like quite
That doesn't
surprising.
sound like the utopia that we've all been
No,
promised
no, I
in
think,
New Zealand.
yeah, I think it depends on which hospital you come from in the UK. But if you have like good hospital where they don't like muck around with your roster too much and they're pretty good with their timings, then comparatively I feel like I felt less tired in the UK than compared to here. But maybe also I'm not used to working so many
Wow.
days straight. Yeah.
That is unexpected, I must say.
And I think all the UK doctors, when they come here, they're like, yeah, we never used to work this many days straight. And I was like, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the whole European like working order thing is very real here. And I do think for
Yeah.
the most part, I think when you go higher in the specialties, like the surgical ones, they definitely things get a bit fuzzy. I will definitely
Yeah.
say that.
Yeah.
But as a junior at our level, I think they're generally quite strict about it.
Yeah.
But I will say also another difference is like as a locum, if you're a SHO, like you can be 1 year into being an SHO or 3 years being into an
Yeah.
SHO, you're getting paid the same rate. So that's
That's
really
true.
interesting
That's
that
true. Yeah.
there's like they're allowing for different money according to experience.
Yeah. Because I guess it is much different. Like, you that year at the end of the year, you totally have like a different perspective of like what a ward job would be and
Oh,
stuff. And
absolutely. No,
yeah.
absolutely. Like, yeah. So, I mean, my complaint or my issue always with England and training
Mm.
is that it takes 1,000 years and 45 minutes to become a consultant or an attending. Is
Yeah.
it the same in New Zealand or is it a little bit more reasonable?
I feel like it depends on which training program you choose. So I guess I can't speak for all the other ones because I am just getting used to the pediatric one for now. So for example, like my training would be 3 years of basic. So they have all together they have 6 years of training. So they divide it into two, 3 years of basic training and then 3 years of advanced training. At the end of each of those 3 years, you do an exam, and then once you've passed like progressed all through the years, at the end of your 6 years, you do another exam and you have to make sure that time you're probably like a pediatric fellow by then, and then after your fellow years you become a consultant. So there's somewhere between 6 to maybe 8 years depending, but you can also take your time during the whole thing. There's no rush. So I think altogether they give you about 16 years if you're going to like
Oh
take lots
my
of breaks
God.
and like go real slow, but yeah, on average about 6 to 8 years.
It's just no matter how long I've been outside of America
Yeah.
or seen and heard different places, it remains ridiculous to me. To become a pediatrician in America,
Yeah.
you're looking at 3 years post med school graduation.
Oh, that's
Like
so different.
it's so mind-boggling, but I do
Yeah.
also appreciate that you can actually take your time, which I think is definitely a lesson that for me I
Yeah.
wouldn't have learned had I not come to England, because stuck in this mindset like go 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 and then
Yeah.
go quickly and finish quickly, then it's done, when
Yeah.
really actually life is still happening and you
Yeah.
shouldn't have to shut everything out in life to become
Yeah.
a doctor, because that's just one part of your life. It's not like the full thing. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I do appreciate that. I do still think that is incredibly long because,
Yeah.
like we said, being a junior is being a junior.
Yeah.
Like, it's never great, no matter how you dice it.
And I feel like, you learn how America and UK are so different. Like you slow down much in the UK. So that probably like 10 times more in New Zealand. I feel like I guess maybe that's what they people talk about like the doctor life balance. People there's a huge stress. Also depends on like which department you're in. Your seniors are like always like, oh, very supportive. Oh, you want to take time off? That's okay. Like you're not gonna be judged about doing something that is probably normal in other jobs. So I guess that I like that part of it where I feel like I do have more control of my life compared to other countries.
Yeah, totally. I think that is super reasonable. Yeah, because like life has to go on. It can't just stop for like a
Yeah, and I
job.
feel
It
like
is just your job. Even
yeah,
though we are all so fortunate and we all love being doctors and, saving lives and all of that. Like it is
Yeah.
also just, not just, but it is a job, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It can't be everything.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
okay, you've been everywhere. You've got so much experience living in different countries, seeing healthcare in different places. What are some of the sort of lessons and cultural competencies that you've acquired along the way?
Ooh, I guess maybe like right from the get-go, Cyprus, where language is so important. I guess that was probably the most thing, like key point that I took back from all our placements in Cyprus was probably that I guess language is so important. And then in the UK, you just anyone could walk through the door, and it's just so diverse wherever you go. Well, maybe not wherever, but like most common like metropolitan places, then you're gonna have all types of people, and even there, language like was important. Sometimes I would come across Indian people from Indian backgrounds, and they can't speak English, and that's where I would use my language, and that was really like nice, and I knew that I would be able to like improve on this and take it back to New Zealand, where there's like another good population of Indian patients. And yeah, just meeting all these different types of people from different cultural backgrounds, and they're just sharing their experiences. Maybe not so much in geriatrics, but definitely like in ED, where there's like yeah anyone, especially during COVID as well, like people have different support networks, and you have to understand that. So I guess you have to be open about learning about different cultures, and then learning about how they want to experience their health journey, and how they want to like how if family is important to them, you got to like make sure, especially during COVID, like no one could come into hospital, so you have to like be on top of that. I remember like one time there was this lady who she was a healthcare worker. She also had HIV, and she was an ED, and she had COVID, and she was super scared, and her daughter was, I think her daughter was in Kenya, and she was like, just, oh, my daughter doesn't know I'm in hospital. Like, and I was like, you need to, like, I think at that time, like, no one really knew COVID too well. So everyone was really scared of like getting it and scared of being in hospital. And I was like, I literally like looked her in the eye, and I just like was like, you need to pull it together for your family. Like, you need to calm down. Like, you're going to be in hospital. You're in the right place. We will get you better, and you will go home, don't worry. And then she was like just broke down in tears, and she's like, oh, thank you so much, doctor. And I like walked to her and was like, oh my god, I'm gonna get fired. So yeah, I guess like that was like a learning point.
Yeah, I think cultural competency is so important. So where I am in England isn't, I don't think it's very diverse compared to, I think, your experience. My
Yeah.
experience is very much so English people, occasionally, people from Asia and things like that. But yeah, like in terms of patients that I've seen, I can probably count the amount of like Black patients that I've had probably over
Yeah.
in the last, since we started. But cultural competency is so like crucial. And I
So
think
crucial.
these days we kind of, it's like a buzzword. People like talking about
Yeah.
diversity and,
Yeah.
inclusion and all of that. But it means so much when you've
Yeah.
got patients that one can see themselves in you. And like,
Yeah.
even though we as doctors are trained to not project ourselves, our own impressions onto others, we all know that historically biases have, played a role. And
Yeah.
so I think it's good for doctors to be reflected, in the general
Oh yeah.
population. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah.
Because I know I can say something to a Ghanaian that comes in. It doesn't even have to be in our language. It can be in English, but because I know the nuance of our culture and what is
Yeah.
acceptable and what is not acceptable,
Yeah.
I might be able to communicate with them. And I think that's kind of the best part. I think Cyprus was really big for that.
Yeah.
Big with helping to grow my own cultural competency, because
Yeah.
a lot of our patients would be like Russians and like,
Yeah. Oh
people
yeah,
that were
so
even from
true. Yeah.
Cyprus. And I
Yeah.
remember even on like an OSCE or something, or a practice OSCE, there was this like Russian lady, and I was her doctor, and I was pretending to be a psychiatrist, and I smiled as she was telling her story about like depression. And
Yeah,
my
yeah.
feedback was like, she thought I was laughing at her. And I was like, oh my gosh,
Right.
like
Yeah.
I'm American. Like we smile to make people feel like
Like
warm and like
comfortable. Yeah,
welcome.
exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But for her and the part of Russia where she was from, that was like not acceptable.
Mocking or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
I doubt I would have come across that really in a learning way outside of
Yeah.
being in a place like Cyprus or in that region of the
Yeah. That's so true. That's
um
so true. And
but
I guess like, yeah, especially like in the UK, you have to be open about because you could literally talk to anyone and you have to like just ask questions. Like some people are so scared about, oh, what if I offend them or
yes,
something? And you're like, nah, like just talk and just be normal, just be a human, you know?
totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Just be a human. That is the moral of the story. Like
Yeah.
I mentioned something recently about an underdiagnosis, and they were like, "Oh yeah, it's not really diagnosed that much in women." And I was like, "Yeah, and especially Black women." And then like everyone froze, and they're like, "Yeah, yeah." And I was like, "Guys, like this is an objective fact. This is not like the woke police or
Yeah.
whatever phrases people use to distract. It's like just look at objective facts, you know."
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and you just think about how would someone who, and this is a room full of doctors, I'm not saying that they aren't competent or that
Yeah.
they would intentionally do something wrong or whatever, but this particular like condition that I was talking about, what are they going to do when they see like a Black woman who's has these symptoms? Are they going to
Yeah.
freeze? You know, like it's just
Yeah. Yeah.
things to think about. Okay, so
Oh,
um
actually, sorry. Can I add? So like we were gonna go we went back to New Zealand about cultural competency. They value it so much more here. We have training sessions where we sit down and like talk about because the native population here, the Māori population, their culture is quite ingrained into the healthcare. So you have to learn the words and you have to learn language of like Māori people, so then they could access healthcare much better. So even if you're not like a Māori doctor and you can't fully understand like the culture, at least you have to like ingrain it into your practice somehow, and you actually get like kind of not like tested, but it's part of your training to, do that. So I feel like here, yeah, it's pretty much like part of healthcare. If you don't, even the UK doctors come here and they're like, oh, like how do I say good morning in this? And they're like, it's right
oh
from the get go. Yeah,
my gosh, I love that.
yeah,
That is so important. It shows such respect to obviously native populations, but like
yeah,
it just shows respect to different people when you like try and make that effort. And it's so funny that you say UK people do that because I always joke that a UK person can see any last name that's not English and they're like literally stumbling over their tongue and teeth.
yeah,
No idea what
yeah,
to do. They don't even try. But the one thing they can say right is like, and they'll say like, for example, Spanish word like paella, right?
yeah, yeah,
Paella.
yeah,
We all know that that's how you say it, or we can learn
yeah.
it, but instead the 100% will always say paella.
Paella,
But when it
yeah.
comes to Ibiza, they're always super ready
Yeah.
to say that, and that's their only that's the only word that they're able to do. But wow, how special! Like I
Yeah.
wonder, and I'm sure there's a lot of research out there, but I
Yeah.
can only imagine that outcomes are so much better when
Yeah.
organizations are intentional about
Yeah. I guess
cultural
because there's so
competency.
much like discrepancy here in terms of like health inequalities and inequities between those different populations. And yeah, there is like actually I can actually see it in research where they kind of start off with worse health outcomes. So obviously they're going to like progress and not too good health outcomes either. So I guess you have to like that is your role as a healthcare professional to make sure that you're trying to make changes, even if they're like small changes. If you can convince one extra person to get their child vaccinated or attend hospital more frequently, or even just simple things like, oh, if you sound like you're having an asthma attack, you need to be in hospital and not trying to manage it at home, because it's not going to cost you any more or any less. But it's just that education, and just like having that one time with them is really, really important.
Yeah, that's super special. And I mean, I like that ethos is clearly included in the system, because
Yeah,
disparities plague every single part of the world. And
yeah,
I mean, so many places and organizations literally shrug
yeah,
their shoulders and turn a blind eye. So
yeah,
that is super
exactly.
special.
Yeah,
Okay, so I've got just a couple of questions
yeah,
more. We spoke about COVID and how it sort of like affected both of us a bit. And I think COVID has simultaneously taught us about the importance of community, and
hmm,
also the importance of realizing that every single place in this world is interconnected.
yeah.
What does a health community look like for you? Both like mainly professionally for self and also for your patients.
A health community here would be, I guess, like all the people that I work with, and then all the different types of patients that I get to meet. And like here, I guess, because like where I work, Northland is a community on its own. It's quite a different, everyone has like different views to like Aucklanders, which is like the main city. So you feel like a community already by having like being surrounded by like similar types of people. And yeah, just kind of regional, being in from different parts of like those regions, you connect more. And then having the similar kind of health experiences, where like our main hospital is the same, so everyone, we get to pretty much meet everyone from Northland that comes through that hospital. So I guess that makes it part of kind of like a special health community in a way.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I do love about centralized care. Your community is literally made by the people that surround you. Like, I live next
Yeah,
to a hospital. I can go down to Tesco or the mall or
yeah,
something and see someone that I saw in A&E. And like,
yeah, literally.
yeah, I think it holds you definitely to a certain level of accountability. Like, you can't be
Yeah,
walking around talking crazy to someone because they're going to be like, "Oh, hi, doctor. Do you remember when you took my
yeah,
bloods?" And you're like,
yeah,
"Oops."
yeah. Literally. And here,
But
I guess, because
hopefully,
like, yeah, I
and
guess,
hopefully, I think it's also sort of like reciprocated in a way, right?
yeah, yeah,
We are all really part of a community, and we should be doing what we can to take care of one another.
yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah, definitely. I guess you start off small and then you realize that the bigger impact is actually so much more and so global. And I guess that's probably what COVID has probably made everyone realize, that actually the little small step of like a vaccination that I take is probably so much more bigger than myself.
Yeah, I sure hope that's the lesson that people are taking.
Well, one can hope. One can.
One can hope. It's good to have hopes and dreams, and hopefully people, answer the call or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Okay. So last question. You've lived in so many different places. We all have learned slang that we've picked up from different places, bits and pieces. For me,
yeah.
I think doxy from
Oh my gosh,
Cyprus,
yes,
it's like always
yes,
gonna stick out. Here, I
yeah,
love the word faffing about because
yeah,
I do faff.
yeah.
I've got little phrases and things. If you were to pick sort of uh slang that you've picked up anywhere in the world right now, including home, like including New
Yeah,
Zealand,
yeah.
what slang word would you use right now to describe where you are professionally?
Ooh, I feel like I'm faffing about. No, I just I think I guess the ultimate New Zealand slang word is probably yeah, nah, yeah, nah. So like it really mean it kind of I had to explain what it really means, but it kind of means like yeah, but not really. So maybe that's what like my thing right now would be probably like yeah, nah, not really. Yeah, are you scared about like being a pediatric registrar? Yeah, nah, yeah, kind of yeah. That's probably what it
That
would
is
be.
hilarious.
But
What?
I think one UK phrase that I will never forget and probably never get used to is you know how people say you're right and then you
Oh my
literally answer like
gosh.
yeah I'm good and you're like and they're like well what are you what
It's
that still happens to me here like because you know you meet UK doctors and you'd think that you'd be okay with it and they'll think that you'd be like used to it by now like you're right yeah I'm good how are you oh.
the stress when I first moved here, the stress that I used to feel at every encounter. You're right, you're right. I'm like, yeah, I'm good. How are you? And they're like walking, like they're not waiting for an
Yeah
answer.
they just
They're
yeah
kind of like, why are
exactly
you answering? And I'm trying to speak quicker, but then like my accent, and then I'm sweating now, and I'm like, do they think I'm rude? Like, what does all of this mean?
I
I
will
will never
never
know the answer to
understand.
you all right.
Never. Yeah, I'm fine. Do I
I'm
not look
fine, I
all right?
guess. And they even do it in emails. They'll send an email to be like,
Oh my God, I've never
hope you
had an
guys all
email.
right. Are you guys all right? How you adjusting? Question mark, and then continue on with the rest of their statement. Like, I
Are
don't know. I
you,
think question marks are
is
just,
that just, yeah, I think that's
decorative
just an open-ended question and it's just never going to have an answer.
with no answer. It's an
Yeah,
open-ended question with the intention to never receive an answer. And that is
exactly.
England in summary.
Yeah, and that is the summary of English.
Well, thank you so much for doing this interview with me.
Oh,
Um,
thank you for having me.
is there anything else that you'd like to share about your journey or anything like that with the people?
Yeah, no, no. No, I think just need to I think just take it as day by day. Like don't stress too much. It's like it's gonna be fine. It's literally like it will be fine. And if it's not, then it's fine as well. You know? Like
You've
literally what
always
could
got good vibes. This is coming from the person who looked at moving into a completely different country, limited English in said country,
yeah,
many, many hours away, and said, what's the worst that can happen? And I love that. This is why we're friends.
exactly. You know? Yeah, exactly. I guess what, yeah, literally what would the worst like that would happen? It's fine. We're living in, you know, first world countries, like how we should be all grateful and just like, yeah, just keep doing what we're doing.
I hope you all enjoyed this week's episode with a fresh steep as she took us on her journey from India to New Zealand to Cyprus to England and back to New Zealand. Like so many others on the podcast, she hasn't had the most traditional of journeys, but each step of the way has been rewarding and useful. I know this week is match week in the United States, and there are many people who matched, and congratulations to all of you for the well-deserved return of rewards. All of your sacrifice has paid off. And for those who did not match, listen to our podcast. There are a lot of people who haven't necessarily had the most traditional journeys. However, their journey didn't end there. Be encouraged and be reminded that the journey is not over. Also, just as a reminder, we do have merchandise available at amisascloset.com. That's AMISSASCLOSET.com. And you can get your Delirium merch there. Information for that is found on our Instagram. If you've been enjoying this season and the episodes that you've heard so far, please be sure to like, rate, subscribe, and send it to all of your friends. Lastly, on our next episode, we'll be chatting with one of the students who was forced to flee Ukraine as a result of the Ukraine-Russian conflict. And as we've seen, there's been quite a lot of discrimination towards African students. We'll be hearing more from her perspective and also providing opportunities and links for you to provide financial support to her and to others. Everyone be well. Continue to wear your masks, regardless of what any politician says. Be reminded that politics and health, while related, are not always the same thing. See you on our next shift, y'all.
like home? Are you happy to be home?
Yes. Oh,
I'm
I
sure.
missed it so much. How long were we away? Like 5 years, like 4 years mid school, 1 year there, and I was like, no, this is it. And then like because I met him as well.